What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from Switch Force. Gabe is here, and we wanted to have an open discussion with all of you on games coming to Switch, and then the reaction when we find out the game isn't coming to Switch. And it centers around something I saw this morning about A Hat in Time. The developers said, hey, it's just not coming to Switch, and it was met with quite a bit of vitriol. And since we are kind of part of the culture of, hey, this game should come to Switch, we'd love to see this on Switch, I wanted to make sure that we were involved in the conversation.
Yeah, perfect example. Just a couple days ago, I made a Fortnite video talking about how great that would be on Switch. The week before, I made one for Dragon Ball FighterZ because that's such a good game, and I feel like it would be right at home on Switch. So we're 100% guilty of it, but the thing that we don't endorse is the hatred that is behind what is happening to the developers of Hat in Time. So that is something that we just do not support whatsoever. We're all about more positive energy here, and yeah, we wish these things happen, but not every time is going to be feasible, pretty much.
Absolutely, yeah. So 100%, we would love all of our favorites on Switch, but we never endorse being nasty, aggressive, angry towards developers, or frankly towards anyone. And Razor Beams on Reddit had a great summary post where he sort of talked about this issue and how a lot of people went overboard against the developers, and the developers basically just said, like, it's just not happening. And then he goes through and kind of describes why some games can't come to Switch or won't come to Switch. And obviously there's some very just like straight up answers. One being they don't want it to. Two, they don't have the time, the money, the staff to make it happen. But then three, some games, even if they could technically run on Switch graphically, or they don't look like they would be too tough for Switch, there might be something within the code or maybe within the engine that just prevents it from being an easy crossover. And that's totally okay. He notes a couple of games here that have issue with Unreal Engine 3 and that it's not natively supported on Switch, and Hat in Time is an Unreal Engine 3 game. If you're not familiar, this is the collectathon in the style of like Banjo-Kazooie that was released last year. It was a Kickstarter game. It was beloved by its fans, and so there was obviously a big push to bring it to Switch. It seems like a great fit given the Nintendo connection with collectathons back in the N64 era. They're not doing it. And I think we see very much that not all games can come to Switch. And so even when we do say like, oh my god, we would love Fortnite on Switch, or oh my gosh, it would be amazing if my favorite series of all time, BioShock, was available portably, it's not realistic. And it's interesting to consider, like, why is this such a thing? And the obvious answer is that the Switch has such a great concept and such a great idea, the hybrid nature, the portability, but it is kind of, when you step back, interesting that we're in this era right now of just like, everyone wants everything on Switch, whether it's a year old, 6 months old, 10 years old, upcoming, and how do we sort of get out of that cycle?
You have to believe at some point it wears off, right? Because the day and date releases that we both feel are eventually going to happen, that just kind of takes care of the problem. So, let's say Dragon Ball FighterZ got released day and date. There is no, hey, Dragon Ball FighterZ should be on Switch conversation. So I do feel like some of that goes away. And you asked, how does it go away? There you go. Perfect example, just day and date. That's a big fix. Something else is probably just accepting that, unfortunately, like, the Switch is underpowered and it can't necessarily handle everything. A game I'm really excited for, Anthem, right? I think it'll be silly to like expect that to come to Switch. It just recently got pushed back. But obviously not everything is going to fit on the platform no matter how badly we want it to.
For sure. And even if it can, it's okay if it doesn't, right? And it is great that the Switch offers this new way to experience a lot of awesome games, and we have seen a lot of developers flock to the system. And some people, called out Hat in Time, like, okay, you could make a ton of money, this would be popular, why don't you want to do it? But there's still no reason for hate or for nasty actions towards said individuals. And even in a situation where it's really not good practice, like something EA has done in the past with Battlefront 2, we still don't condone any sort of obnoxious or in-your-face or aggressive behavior. It's never okay. And the best way to make changes is to have conversation. But if you have the conversation and there still is no change, you kind of just have to let it go. I do think that once Nintendo gets clear on their calendar for 2018, maybe some of this goes away. Because right now we're in this weird kind of no man's land where we know a few things, but we don't know a lot, especially from the third-party side. And therefore, it's like, okay, let's just suggest everything. And, maybe if we garner enough of a drum roll, maybe if we get enough momentum, we can kind of will it into actually happening.
Yeah, good point. I feel like a Direct or even E3 will appease a lot of that, because then we'll have a much clearer picture on what's happening for the rest of the year. It's going to be exciting times.
Absolutely. Do you think this ever ends? Or do you think that the quote gimmick of the Switch is too good that even in 2020 we're going to have people being like, oh my God, I don't understand why we don't have speedrunners on Switch? I mean, I found myself saying the same thing. We saw that presentation from Tiny Build announcing 6 games for Switch, and the instant go-to for me was, wait, but speedrunners would be great on Switch. I wonder if that just is something that maybe it does subside, but it's always going to be there.
Yeah, to an extent, but I also feel like at some point, if the platform is around for like long enough, and by all indication it's going to be, like, we get used to it. Like, we're going to get used to the fact that, hey, not everything's coming. Right now, it's still relatively new. I mean, it's over a year old at this point, but still relatively. And, yeah. Well, I mean, the Switch hasn't been out for a full year, but you know what exactly. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. So maybe year 3 or 4, I think this stops being a thing, because we are going to know the way things shake out. At this point, it's such a mystery. Like, hey, how is the Switch going to function with all these things that we want? And we'll have patterns of behavior from companies, and I think we'll go off of there. I think it does subside.
Part of the issue also is just the Nintendo nostalgia, the Nintendo hardcore. I mean, there are so many rumors, fake leaks, real leaks, all around Nintendo that just, it's not like you see a ton of rumors around Xbox, right? I mean, there's some, of course, but it's not like people are speculating, oh my God, when's Xbox bringing back this, or when is this going to happen? Whereas we've had Smash Brothers and Pokemon thoughts and rumors like every week pretty much since the system came out, right? It seems like someone's always on the hunt for some indication or at least some theory of why this would work, why this wouldn't work. The other thing that I did want to briefly mention that I think is just ironic is, on one hand, we say we're sick of ports, we want new games, give us the new releases, we want more of ARMS and Splatoon 2 and Kirby Star Allies and Yoshi and Metroid Prime, more of that stuff. And at the same time, we're constantly pushing for these other games that are ports. Just a little bit weird. I think the difference may be that a port is different than a re-release, and maybe that is what we should start talking about, that we don't want re-releases, but we want, I don't know, I guess they're kind of one and the same.
Yeah. It's weird, right? Because, yeah, we want all these cool games, but, like, if we're honest with ourselves, like, if we already played Hat in Time, are we going to play Hat in Time again just because it's on Switch? Like, probably not. But, yeah, everybody just claims to want all of these things. And sometimes they just probably, like, don't even, like, do as well. I'd hate to be a company that, sees all this, like, fervor online, like, hey, bring, your game to Switch, and then it comes to Switch and fans don't support. Like, that would be, like, a very bad feeling. I would hate that.
And I think that is something that's unpredictable, right? How much of the love and the fervor around, hey, bring it to Switch, is just all talk, right? Oh my God, I loved Hat in Time. It sounds like it would be amazing on Switch, and then it releases and you don't see it. Obviously, we've seen some cases where the game sells even better on Switch than its initial platforms, but we also, and they're less discussed because, we focus on the successes, but there are companies that have come out and said, like, hey, we brought our game to Switch and it did nothing. It was like a waste. Right? Yeah. So that's an issue as well of, oh my God, we want this on Switch, and then it releases, and really it was just like the concept, kind of like you said, like, oh my God, am I actually going to replay Hat in Time? Am I actually going to replay such and such game? I do think it is, for me, more palatable and more desirable to have ports of smaller studios games or third-party studios than Nintendo. I would love to see Nintendo focus more on new stuff. And maybe that's where kind of that difference. So I was thinking about, like, okay, why is something like Hyrule Warriors not as appealing as Hat in Time? And maybe for some people it is, but for me it's not, because I have already seen that on a Nintendo platform. And I think I want Nintendo to focus on bigger, better, bolder, new projects, whereas some of these other studios, like, yeah, bring them into the Switch family, bring them on board, and maybe that then leads to new games. We saw that with TowerFall, right? It kind of came out in reverse order, but they were on board with TowerFall, and then Celeste ends up being the darling of the Switch, I feel like, or at least the indie darling of the year thus far. And that is kind of what maybe some people really want from some of these other things. Like, hey, bring your old game to Switch, see how much it's just like a great place to be and a fun community and a great platform, and then bring something new. I don't know. It's a very interesting conversation, and one that I think, we are stuck with for a while. A couple things I think, just to wrap up. One, make sure that you're treating everyone with kindness. That's really way more important than any video game release or any port or any Nintendo Switch anything. Two, once we get more of the calendar, I think this does subside a little, Gabe, like you mentioned. Once we know more and once we kind of have an understanding, because right now we don't know what Nintendo's sort of thoughts are on, hey, Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed or on major third-party games, and we know that they're all about the indies, but we got to find out more. And then 3, not every game is going to come to Switch. Not every game needs to be on Switch. Not every game can thrive on Switch. There's just no way for that to happen. So keep those in mind. Let us know your take in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. We want a lot on Switch. We hope a lot comes to Switch, but we also accept the way the cookie crumbles. I'm going to go get some cookies of my own, gluten-free style. Gabe, what kind of cookie are you going to have today?
Chocolate chip. It's the only cookie I will ever eat.
The classic is where Gabe goes. Gabe is the new classic.
I am.
And while Iggy Azalea's tunes play in the back of your mind, we will say good night and good luck. Thanks so much for watching. Fantastic day for myself and Gabe. Switch Force out.